Sumit, just to take that point forward, the impact of that as far as the semiconductor business is concerned, and really, where are we at today in terms of the next big, I mean, if we're talking about we're already in the next new industrial revolution, where are we at this point in time?
I mean, the way I look at it is we are at the start of an accelerated phase of discovering what AI can do. And this does require bigger and bigger models to train these LLMs. It's going to consume a lot of capacity from a semiconductor perspective, a lot of investment that large companies are making, governments are going to be making. And the next step, obviously, is to then figure out how to make these models smarter, because the current trajectory will take it only so far. And there's a lot of research going on that front as well. But I think we are at the cusp of, a 10, 20-year journey where the rate of change in our business is going to become exponential in terms of seeing what AI can do. And it's going to have a significant level of ripple effects across society, across many, many different businesses. There are certain types of problems that AI is uniquely positioned to solve in a better way than human beings can. And working with big data is one of them, right? And we spoke about healthcare. And, AI programs are uniquely capable of looking at massive data sets of people with certain types of diseases and certain genetic makeup, and be able to tell trends on what is causing certain things and what kind of drugs can work in certain ways better than other drugs. And as we spoke about AlphaFold earlier, it took us 50, 60 years to understand the 3D structure of proteins of 0.1% of all the proteins that exist. 50, 60 years. It took us 6 months for AlphaFold to figure out the 3D structure of the 99.9% of the remaining proteins in the world, right? So there are these kinds of really powerful capabilities, and we can use them in a really good way to reinvent a lot of things. I mean, take education, for example. There's such a big shortage. There's like 44 million shortage of teachers around the world by certain studies. And kids all get sort of, the same basic education level regardless of capability. And now you can use, very sophisticated AI capabilities to allow each student to progress at a different rate. Yep. And, you can look at that, and you can look at, things like software programming. I mean, you can use even today's capabilities in LLMs and be able to generate software using English prompts without really needing to learn how to program.
So you do believe that this has the power to truly democratize technology?
Truly democratize technology, and also it will in many ways commoditize human knowledge in some ways. There are certain aspects of human knowledge that will become very easily accessible. If you want basic understanding of, what does the law say in certain situations, you can actually ask a prompt and it'll tell you in a very comprehensive way, perhaps better than a lawyer will tell you. So
save on legal fees. Certainly here in the U.S., that would be a significant saving. But Rajiv, talking about some of the changes, and I wanted to actually talk to Sumit, but let me address that question with you. We're talking about replacing traditional data centers now with AI factories, and the implications that will have. How are you reading some of these changes, and what do you intend to do to leverage on them?
So, I'll kind of bring it down to what we do on a day-to-day basis in our company. So we look at AI in 3 different ways. Okay, so first is, what can we do to use the latest AI to make us better? Okay, so as Sumit mentioned just right now, we already use AI for our marketing. We use AI for software development type stuff. We are actually also piloting AI for chip development stuff. There's brand new startups with some super innovative capabilities. So, I joke with my team, if you have 10 people, you're like 50 people. I don't need to hire so many people anymore, okay? So that's one. So AI, how can we make use of AI to be better? The second way we use AI is, can we use AI to make our products better? So some of these cybersecurity things that I spoke about, while the attackers have access to AI, so do we. And we have the opportunity to, for example, reimagine the cybersecurity stack using AI. And what is amazing is that we have people within, 2 people within 2 months can do stuff that another company would have taken 15 people 2 years. Right? And so the rate at which we can move fast and provide capabilities is amazing. Okay, so that's the second. And then finally, this infrastructure, I think it's an amazing infrastructure, these AI factories. But for the world to use AI at the scale that people are envisioning, AI infrastructure needs to be a lot better. And I think what we are trying to figure out is how can we improve that infrastructure.
So high on CapEx, but your significant savings as far as OpEx is concerned.
I mean, power, AI consumes a lot of power. Can you make it more power efficient? Can you, there's some software things that will continue to happen to make AI better. But essentially, to get to 100x compute from here, in a straight line, I don't think it's sustainable.
Yeah, not sustainable. But is this going to largely be a big tech game, Sri, or do you think that we are going to see the unicorns and eventually the unicorns get to decacorn status on account of riding the AI wave?
So that's sort of an obvious answer to. I don't invest in big large companies. I invest in small companies, and I'm hoping that many of the companies that are here that are our investments will become these huge companies. I mean, I remember the time when NVIDIA was a $10 billion company, and in a matter of whatever length of time, it's changed. And I believe, what Balan is building in Percipient, what Rajiv is building in Auradine, these are examples of companies that are solving some fundamental problems. Balan is at the higher end of the stack in terms of the actual application that uses a lot of these capabilities. And Rajiv is building the core capability itself on which a lot of these things ride. And as I mentioned, for me, I think it's almost like building the road. You have to build the road before you can have, the restaurants and the gas stations and everything else on the freeway for the cars to take advantage of. So unless you build the right road, you can't do it. I mean, you're obviously, the whole C-Link saga in Bombay comes to mind because, Bombay is all torn up. Because I think that is absolutely the right analogy. Because unless you build it, people can't use it. And so we are really solving that problem. And I expect all of these companies to become huge companies. And don't forget, Intel was a startup.
Yes.
Arthur Rock, wrote that first check from Venrock, and it became what it became. And same is true of NVIDIA.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we expect all of these things to happen.
And we wish you all the very best of luck with those plans. But let me throw this open to our guests here. If anybody has a question or a comment, feel free to raise your hands. I will get the microphone across to you.
One of the ways that I think about AI is the ability to take data into the realm of knowledge. And I'd like to understand how each of you are applying that or thinking about applying that, and where you see major roadblocks in your industry.
Well, I think that's probably a nice way to think about AI. If you want to take knowledge to wisdom, I think that involves humans. And so I wouldn't, as excited as I am about AI, and we're in the middle of the edge of this, I can share with you that there is no decision that humans make that doesn't have an element of values, a component of consciousness that is so critical to the success in many of these areas challenges we're faced by. So I do think that you're thinking about it the right way. The massive amount of data that we can now triage and help accelerate understanding through still relies on the human being to bring wisdom out of that knowledge. And so there's much more data that we can understand now, that we can learn from, that wasn't possible for humans to comprehend themselves, looking at thousands of medical records or building a proper curriculum for a child that has a certain deficit. And you want to try and do that individually, or can you do that with an understanding that all the data provides? And so really, in some ways, there's nothing mysterious happening here. We have been going on an accelerated path of human and machine teaming since I've been, since I've been alive. And there is this kind of step function with the power that these hardware, NVIDIA, a great American company, but other companies are now developing for us. But I think that's right. We've got a massive amount of information. We're creating knowledge in some ways. And now I think the knowledge to wisdom is next.
Yeah, well, if I may add, I think, Melanie, founder of Prelis, one of really dramatically innovative company, it's not just about AI. I think you have to really be thinking about, you're almost like somebody, one of the popular CEOs said you have to ban the use of the word AI. It's not artificial, nor is it intelligence.
That's right.
It's a fundamentally new way of approaching problems, large problems, and solving them. And in the case of life sciences or biology, the use of technology that traditionally would have been in the semiconductor industry and extending to biology really opens up, AlphaFold was an example, and 3D printing is another example.
Correct.
And really looking at, how do you actually use the techniques of lithography to build a, 3D print a human organoid in a dish to be able to do, human antibody testing. I mean, to me, AI actually enables you to do lots of things, and the unintended consequences of that is that there's going to be lots of innovation in and around the main area of what you think of as LLMs, right? All of these things have to come together, and it has to happen in a very power-efficient way. If you don't do it in a power-efficient way, no matter how much computing you throw at it, it's going to be unsustainable.
Right.
So I think that's the way I would sort of frame it.
Anyone else here with a question or a comment? Yes, Emar, we're just going to get the microphone to you.
So all this is exciting, but the question is, someone did a behind-the-envelope calculation and said about $300 billion has gone into building infrastructure so far in AI, and $300 billion more is going into it. And they calculated the revenue coming from AI, and it's like $2 or $3 billion. Yeah. So when are the economics going to change? Because people like Sriram and others investing tens of billions into this market, when are you going to see the returns?
Well, that's a really important question that we are all trying to answer, because, as I said, there are going to be lots of companies that actually are trying to solve the higher layer applications. I mean, to me, how many video creating or video editing AI-assisted software do you need? Right? And so, you have one, you have them all.
Yeah.
So 9 of them may fail.
Yeah, that's right.
But to solve the problems of high bandwidth memory, to solve the problems of interconnect, to solve the problems of 5G, Varsha is here from Qualcomm, to have Qualcomm-like companies solving the more fundamental problems, I think these are very hard. And those companies may be sustainable, where the companies that sort of try to, do a quick turn on the applications and services using AI, will really struggle for the underlying business model. So I think we have to be careful about not throwing the baby with the bathwater in this context.
Yeah, and I would just say this is a long-term game, MR, from my perspective. I think it may be a decade or more before we see these large problems change. To be honest with you, even the simplest thing is difficult to get adopted at scale. Using AI, because there is a sense of, how can I trust this to do what my well-trained professionals have done? And there is a little bit of a hype curve about what you just explained is under the covers. This is the reality. Very few firms have been able to take AI-enabled capabilities to scale. Yeah. To any kind of profitability in really any of the key areas where we think AI, the natural application of AI would first take hold and take root. So we shouldn't underestimate, despite the excitement of everything that's been described up here, the importance of human creativity, ingenuity. My mom was a young CPA here in America. We thought when computers came that there'd be no more accountants. Yeah. We know that didn't happen. Yeah. So you can imagine humankind will continue to evolve just as we have to higher level cognitive capabilities as the machine intelligence, if we can call it intelligence. I agree with the CEO that you quoted, that there's nothing artificial, there's nothing genuinely intelligent about anything we're doing. Even large language models are largely, as you guys know, statistical in their very foundation, but it feels magical because of the amount of data they've been trained on. But I think you're right. This is the question we have to ask. Where are you aimed? And I would just advise that the young, brilliant startups in India and in America here, you should know what problem you're solving. Yeah. Don't be enamored of your technology. By the way, coding with AI doesn't give you a competitive advantage. In case you have any ideas about becoming a technologist now, if you want to win against your competitors, you better have some human creativity, ingenuity, and some understanding of the mission problem you're solving if you want to win.
I think the other way of just framing it is that the boring, the dirty, and the dangerous.
Or movie.
I know, that could be a movie. That could be a movie.
That's exactly right. So the AI theme
sounds like
is...
a family. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Wow. Speak for yourself. The boring, dirty, dangerous are all going to get replaced with advanced technology. And you can find n number of examples of companies that are actually building products that make it safer for people to exist. So I think that's the way I would think about it. Those are the real hard
applications that may succeed first. Because who would have thought that selling books on the internet would be a great thing? But don't forget,
that's how Amazon started.
That's not what Amazon is today. They are doing something completely different. So I think that's a way to frame it for if you.
So Sumit and Rajiv, what would be the sequel to Boring, Dirty, Dangerous?
No, I think this is a lot of good questions here, but one perspective I'd like to offer is there is a race going on right now to get to artificial general intelligence, and it requires tremendous amount of investment, and it requires tremendous amount of infrastructure to be built out. And it's not going to happen tomorrow or next year, but within the scope of the next 5-6 years, I think we would have made a pretty substantial leap towards that. And new breakthroughs will be needed to get there. But a lot of what will generate revenue, I believe, is productivity. Because AI is not, in the near term, in the medium term, to be thought of as replacing humans as much as augmenting and making things a lot more efficient and productive. And scaling human capability in ways that humans cannot do. And we talked about that example with proteins, right? So there are lots of applications like this where we'll be able to solve problems at scale that humans cannot just solve by themselves. We'll be able to, for example, on the code generation side, make programmers more productive. We won't be able to necessarily replace programmers, but make them more productive. We'll be able to make every single profession more productive. And that requires, on the back end of it, a huge amount of compute capacity to be delivering all of that. And that's where, ultimately, where the monetization will come in.
Well, and the monetization is going to be something that investors and, of course, companies will focus on as we build this out. Rajiv, the final word to you.
Well, first of all, I totally agree that there is tremendous hype, not a lot of revenue. But the other thing that's going on is that everybody is working on it, right, across industries. So whether it's automotive, robotics, healthcare, programming, across the board, everybody is in the adoption stage. And AI still makes mistakes, does hallucinations. So people are trying to improve the quality of AI. So literally, I think there's thousands of SaaS applications incorporating AI, and it has all these other problems. So I think that this is a period of building. I see that in 2 to 3 years, there'll be a lot more products that are generating revenue. So it'll be a pretty steep curve, and things are going to become a lot better. I mean, one example I like a lot is that in the healthcare world, half the people go to doctors that are below average by definition, right? If you look at all the doctors, half are above and half are below average.
Be careful, you might get sued.
But with AI, 100% of the people can get access to the top 10%, right? So if that intelligence comes in, it will not just improve the productivity, but the quality of a lot of things in the world. And it's an exciting, next 5 years are going to be super exciting.
If I may just say the last thing.
Yes.
I think the $10 trillion company in AI hasn't been conceptualized yet. And that will happen in the next 3, 4, 5 years, where that company is kind of like, what happened during, again, going back to history. None of the company, starting with e-toys, you don't see those companies. So you'll have a lot of companies today that will fail, and there'll be some spectacularly successful companies that'll get formed, and that's what I'm betting on.
Well, that's what you're betting on, and I think as was very evident and clear from this panel, everyone's building to deal with the dirty, boring, and dangerous, and maybe see entrepreneurship flourish. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us with the big picture as well as the nuts and bolts of what's going on with the AI story today, and thank you very much for being a wonderful audience. Appreciate your time. We are going to take a break here on Voices from the Valley, but there's a lot more conversation coming up for you on CNBC-TV18. For now, from all of us on the team, goodbye and many thanks for watching.